Well, I'm here with Fred Odoyoye of Reachable Reconciliation. And Fred, I've just been thinking about a lot of conversations that I've had, both with teenagers and adults, about some of these, like they seem like barriers and sticking points to people actually coming together and understanding each other
Yeah.
across this racial divide we're stuck in right now. And one of those sticking points that comes up a lot, I think, with both teenagers and adults is the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And there's this underlying feeling that there's something sinister
Mm.
about Black Lives Matter and that its genesis, its roots, we're not really hearing the true story about what the Black Lives Matter movement intends. And there's something to be wary of. And there's something very threatening about that movement that people have a hard time getting past. And I
Sure.
know this has come up for you in the coaching cohort groups that you lead in Reachable Reconciliation. Just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you navigate those tensions around the Black Lives Matters movement. What do you do?
Sure. I think like any situation, um, it's deeper rooted than just the BLM, right? So people don't really want to take, or people really don't want to take spiritual inventory on themselves and find out what helps shape why they view or see a group of people or an individual the way they are. And some of that comes from what our previous historical patterns, our environments, or whatever. So it helps shape the way we think. The other is information, right? What kind of information are we getting that causes us to think a certain way? And so even when you look at BLM, right? I think that there is a slant that people have on the information because rather than like any organization, um, finding out what are their mission, what are their values, what do they stand for, who's the makeup of the group, what are their intentions, and then actually watching, you know, what are some of their contributions, what are their accomplishments, what have they helped to solve in a community or a systemic situation. And so you miss those, but then you take these isolated moments, right, that are influenced by, whatever it may be, social media or somebody else's perspective, and you adopt that as your own, sometimes because that's the information you're getting, but other times because the true reality is there's something inside of you that you haven't dealt with. And so you can easily attach yourself to that line of thinking because that's really your natural line of thinking.
Yeah, it's already your interior narrative
Right,
that helps you to make sense of the world. And so
right.
when you hear a slanted perspective on something like the Black Lives Matter movement, then that slanted perspective fits your existing narrative, right? So if you're tracking back, you really do have to deal with that existing narrative first, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's not always about race, but since we're talking about it, I mean, think about it, Rick. It'd be the same way if on my end, I felt like, I have these stereotypes and perceptions of white people, right? And so all of my line of thinking was just, what I've heard, what I've thought about white people, but I never really experienced it for myself. Right? That's where we get divide from. And that's why we are the way we are right now.
Or even like, hey, look at what that white guy's wearing right now. Yep, that's about what I thought white people wear. Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
and it kind of fits the preconceived notions of maybe who I am
Yeah.
based on even what I wear. Oh, there's a whole lot I can infer from that, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a movie Crash that's just it's an older movie, but it's a great movie because it's all these wonderful actors and actresses who have these preconceived perceptions, and stereotypes about people. And the movie really brings that out. But until they're forced to crash into each other and learn the value of each other because there's a need there, do they really learn, who people are and why they do what they do?
Yeah, and so to kind of wrap this up, what I'm taking from what you're saying is we have two directions we're going here. One's going in, and one's going out. but the one going in affects the one going out a lot. What we were saying and understanding about our own motivations and preconceptions really is coloring how we relate to others, and that becomes the barrier. Then it's not Black Lives Matter that's the barrier. It's really, well, my own biases around that are what the barrier is. So maybe we can give people a homework assignment: watch the movie Crash, and
What?
start the process of inventory in, well, what are my sort of hidden, buried, just accepted default settings around some of this, and how might they be coloring my response to groups like this? Because as you said at the start, every group has its issues. If you just took every group's one-off issues that have happened along the way and say, well, that's what they're really about, you could do that with any group and condemn them.
Right. And it's easier to do that from a distance than it is if you are in a continual, um, uh, just a continued connection, right, with either that person or that group. So just, like you and I, Rick, from if it were day one and you and I were learning about each other, we're learning, right? But in day 30, right, we spent more time, and that's with any individuals, right? The more we spend time, the more we have experiences, the more we learn, we share, and we create together. Then we get to know the value of who they are, why they exist, and what they do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last thing that stuck in me from what you said too is almost like, well, look at the fruit of what an organization like that has left in its wake. That's another way to look at, and that's a Jesus way to look at it too. If you want to understand what kind of tree you got, examine the fruit. And I think the fruit of the BLM movement in our culture has been way to raise awareness about um, a privileged position that most people have taken for granted for human reasons. They have taken for granted that privileged position, and it's helped many, many people, I think, to think about life from a different perspective. Well, that's a good fruit. That's the kind of fruit that Jesus would want to produce.
Yeah.
So thanks,
How do you
Fred.
create new patterns of insights? Yeah. Take a look at them and maybe get a new perspective. Read, learn, and as you're saying, see more about them, and then you'll understand that it's a BLM is an entity that's about justice for all.
So good. Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, brother.